Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's InduSoft Tips and Tricks webinar for April 27th, 2016. We're glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. If I could get a quick, let's see here, a quick sound check from everybody. Thank you. Perfect. Not from everybody, from our team down in Austin. Sorry, I was I was getting a call at the same time I was starting. So I was looking for a sound check from our Austin office. We got that from Austin as well as several other people. Thank you. We're going to begin today. Quick introduction. My name is Scott Quartier. I'm Senior Technical Sales with InduSoft. Going on 30 years of industrial automation experience. Been with InduSoft for, gosh, I don't know how long, 8 years, I think. And before I was actually an employee, I was one of InduSoft's first customers, or at another company that was one of InduSoft's first customers. So I've been using InduSoft for a long time, 17, 18 years, and been involved in a lot of different applications, automotive, plastic injection, many different types of applications. So as we go along today, what I'm going to show you is, as I've taught the training classes all around the world, I've seen people struggle in a few areas. I've seen people not struggle because InduSoft is a pretty easy to use product, but maybe there's some things that would help if they were showed it, rather than reading the entire manual from cover to cover, because most, if not all, of this stuff is in there. Somebody can, kind of handhold and spend an hour and show it to you and make you go, oh, that's how that works, or give you some ideas that might spark some other ways that you can use the product that'll help you out and get you some good information for your project. So some of the things that I'm going to cover today, I'm going to start out kind of slow and simple, changing some font colors in ways that you might not have realized, using tags as a station address for PLC communications, on-screen keyboards, not only the InduSoft keyboard, but in this case the Microsoft keyboard, as well as doing some trends, configuration and saving, and HTML reporting. So I didn't cover everything line by line, but you can take a look at that and we'll get going in there. So before we get going here, well, let's switch over to InduSoft Web Studio, which I already created a project, but it's an empty project. I just created it just to save a few seconds here. I ran about 5 minutes over in the morning session, so I'm going to try to prevent doing that and get you out of here right at the top of the hour. So I'm going to insert a screen here, and what we're going to talk about is the different font colors. Now, in order to use text in a project, you can use the text object, or what I often prefer to do, and you'll see in a lot of the symbols that I've created and the different webinars that I've done, I'll often use a rectangle, and sometimes what I'll do is I'll remove the border and even remove the fill of it to just use the caption field to be able to get text in there. And one of the things that, for example, let's put some text in here. Test. And if you want to change, let's say, the font size, you can go into this button here for fonts. And if you want to change the font size and the font color, let's make this so it's maybe a little bit larger, and then drop this drop down. And here you have 16 different colors to be able to change that font. Well, for years and years, I thought you could only change to these different colors. Let's say we wanted an orange. Well, orange is not one of these colors, so I might pick and settle on a red or a yellow, but I truly wanted orange. So what I then figured out a little bit later on is, instead of doing a rectangle or a text object, what I could do was use the Smart Message object and choose inside the messages. I could actually choose the drop-down color picker to choose the font foreground, and then I could choose from, let me pull this up on screen here a little bit higher. I could choose the theme colors. I could create my own custom colors and add to this with this color picker, and here I can get essentially all 16 million possible colors. Well, then I found out that didn't work in our SMA client, which is the one that you can view on iPads and Android tablets and things like that. So I kind of stopped using that, especially when I made symbols. But then I found out that that drop-down list in the caption, for example, on this rectangle here, I think I made this larger but didn't say OK. So I'm going to make that a little bit larger font just so we can see it. Then I found out that here on the Format tab, you can actually use this font selection and change the font colors to that same theme colors or the custom colors that you've chosen. So if I want, let's say, an orange color here, I can choose that and get any of those 16 million colors for the font colors. So that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up as a tip that eluded me for years and years. In fact, I say this quite often, that I learn something new every day. In fact, somebody taught me something in the morning class or the morning WebEx that I didn't know. So there's my thing that I learned new for the day. Anyway, so there's a concept that I wanted to show you. Now, a little bit related to that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a rectangle just as a placeholder, and I'll show you why I'm doing that. And then I'm going to draw another rectangle on the screen. And let's say that I had a particular style that I wanted to keep for a rectangle throughout my entire project. Maybe it's a button object, maybe whatever object it is. I'm just going to do this with a rectangle to give you an idea. So let's say that I wanted to change the properties of this. Maybe this was a thick line and it was black, and the interior of this was a light gray instead of that light blue color, and maybe it had some text in it. Maybe I would change that text, but maybe I wanted a placeholder, and maybe I would make that font a little bit larger, and maybe it was red in color. So once I put that on there, so maybe I wanted all rectangles to be like that. How could I do that? Rather than having to go through that step-by-step process, what you can do is actually right-click on an object once you've configured it, and see here there's Set as Default for New Objects. So once I do that for that particular type of object, in this case it's the rectangle, I can make that the default for new rectangles. So now when I go select a rectangle from the toolbar and draw that, notice that it has those same properties. So that makes it a little bit easier to configure and create new objects if that's what you want as your standard object. Maybe you don't like the colors that we chose as the defaults. Now, the reason why I drew this original object on here is because there's no resetting of that. If you want to go back to the original, I highly recommend that you just temporarily start out by drawing one object at that default color. You could probably figure out what the colors were. We can find out and reset that for you if you wanted to. But I'm going to go back to that object. And before I do that, just to show you, for example, I can still draw the rectangle, but that does not change the properties for the other objects. And what I did find out in this morning's webinar, the thing that I learned new, is that you can also apply some of the color properties to those. Let me do that right here. Let's say I wanted to make this circle an ellipse. Let's say I want to make this ellipse a circle and then make it into a lamp by applying the color animation to it. I could put some tag in here and then apply my color animation, set my colors in here, my limits, and then let's say maybe that ellipse was just to start out with a kind of a green color. I could then save that as a default for new objects, and then when I drew a new ellipse on the screen, it'll start out with that color, but also notice that it has the color animation applied to it too. So that's very, very handy if you want to start out that way. But again, I'm going to go back to the defaults here and set the rectangle back to default, set the ellipse back to default. So hopefully that was something that might save you a little bit of time as you get going. Before I flip into the next topic, for everybody that's joined, hopefully everybody's on now. I can't hear you in this type of webinar. This type, we have the audio turned off for you. If you have questions or comments, put those into the chat panel or the Q&A panel, and I'll try to get to those during the presentation. A question came in: can you also use other animations? I honestly don't know because I just found that out. Let's give it a try. Let's say that I wanted to make this not only a lamp or color change, but let's say maybe I wanted to put a command animation on it, and maybe I wanted to apply it to a toggle and to a tag called mode. I don't know if this will contain the tag or save that tag as mode. Let's put that as a Boolean. And right-click, set default for new objects. And now when I draw a new object on the screen, it has the color, it has the command, And look at that, it saved the tag as well. So it looks like it works with other animations. I haven't fully tested this or worked with this. This is something new to me as of just a couple of hours. So it looks like a great opportunity to save some time and some mouse clicks as you get moving along. Thanks for the question. Appreciate it. So I'm going to try to reset this back to the original here. Okay, so the next topic that I wanted to cover is, let's see, the font color from the ribbon, rotating lines for scales and arranging. Let's move some of these objects over here. Give myself some space here on the screen. Now, if you're not aware of this, I actually create a lot of the symbols for InduSoft Web Studio. So let me bring in the website just to show you where you can find some of those symbols here. Unfortunately, I've shrunk the window as opposed to bringing it in. So if you go to the store, from the main navigation for the main InduSoft homepage, if you go to the store and you go to the drop down, sorry, it looks like I clicked on one of the videos here that we did. Let me go back to the home page here as soon as this is loading. Anyway, on the store, you can go to free add-ons, and then there's a list of all of the available symbols that we've created as a symbol of the week. And scroll down here through some of these. You can see some nice vertical meters, some displays, and the kind of thing that I wanted to show here, let me grab a meter, let's say, take a look at these green energy symbols. For example, this scale inside of this meter, these lines, how did I make those lines, maybe the beveled edge around this meter? So let's talk about that and show you that here. Let me drag the website off here. And so what I would normally do is start with something like an ellipse. Before I start with the ellipse, let me actually do the lines. So what I'm going to do is start with the scale. So I'm just going to draw a vertical line, and I might pay attention to the thickness of this line, the color of the line. By default, it's this blue 2 pixel wide border. You might change that to 1 pixel wide. And then what I'm going to do is hold down my control key and drag with my mouse. And that's an easy way to make a copy of an object. Instead of hitting Control C and Control V, you can actually select an object, hold down the control key, and drag a copy of it, and it'll keep all of that formatting. So that's a real nice feature there as well. So now that I drug a copy of that line, what I'm going to do is apply a, now that I have that information, what I'm going to do is instead of putting a tag or an expression in this field, I'm just going to put a constant of the number 1. And I'm going to say, okay, this will go from 0 to 1, and when it's at 1, this is going to be rotated 45 degrees. And then what I can do is make a copy of this and configure that to be rotated negative. Ooh, before I do that, let's go back. Let's delete that one because I missed one step here. Because it's always easier to configure the object to make a copy of it than to go back in and configure everything over and over again. I wanted it to rotate at the center point. And then I'm going to make a copy of it. And I'll take this one to be negative 45 degrees rotated. And then I'll make a copy of this one. And this one I'm going to make negative 22.5 degrees rotated. And then the next one will make positive 22 degrees rotated. And I could do further more of these to get the complete scale, but you'll get the idea of what this does. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stack these on top of each other. And rather than doing this manually, because sometimes with really thin lines it's hard to do, what I'm going to do is window around all of those objects, select them all, and then use the format align center, and align middle. And now they're all stacked on top of each other. And now when I run this screen, what you'll see is those will kind of fan out and start to build that scale. And again, I could do more of these. I just wanted to show you the concept of this. So here we go. We're chugging along, trying to get this runtime going here. I apologize because sometimes our corporate office decides to do antivirus scans or updates in the background. I can hear my computer chugging, so I don't know what's going on. Let's wait a second here and see when this comes up. I got some comments in. The person said, thank you for trying the animation and saving that as a default. You're very welcome. I'm not sure why this isn't coming up here. I think it's still here chugging in the background. I'll give it another second. Looks like it did come up. Here we go. So you can see that these lines have started to rotate, and they're not rotating. They've permanently rotated to that position because I put that constant in there. And I could do, other angles and get to the entire 360-degree scale. So in doing that, another thing that I'll often do is I'll take an ellipse, let's say, and make it a little bit larger, quite a bit larger than the actual lines or the scale. Maybe I'll go into format, and let's say that this is 350 pixels by 350 pixels. I'll directly type that in so I get a perfect circle. And then I'll change the properties to have no line, and the fill color, I'll use the fill effects down here, which is the gradient, and I'll go from black to white, and then I'll make that diagonal, and I'll use this variant right here, which is light in the upper left corner and then dark in the lower right-hand corner. So you can see it gets that shading. Then what I'll do is I'll make a copy of that, and then I'll reduce this by about 10 pixels down to 340 pixels. And then I'll go to the other variant, which will be dark in the upper corner. And then I will push that to the back. And then I'll push the first one behind everything else. And then what I'll do is, now that I have all of those objects, what I'll do is I'll window around those, say format, align center, align middle. So everything is centered up there. And maybe I want all of those lines to be black. If you remember, that I think there's 5 different lines there stacked on top of each other. Maybe I want those black because personally I can't see that blue on the gray there very well. So what I'll do is I'll window around and select all of those lines. And very similar to how I change the fonts using the format, I can come in here and change the lines all at once. So now they're changed to that color. And so now I've got this nice beveled edge here. And let's do one other thing. Let's take another ellipse and put it kind of here in the middle. And then what we'll do is we'll change its color. Again, no line. And a similar fill with black to white. But in this case, we're going to use from center. In fact, let's change that from black to maybe a little bit lighter gray. And then we'll choose this pattern here. Make kind of a standout little centerpiece there. And once again, I'll center everything up. So I'll go to Format, Align Center, Align Middle. And now when I run this, it's created a nice scale on a nice beveled looking meter. And maybe you could throw some numbers on there and a needle in the middle and get to that. Now the whole reason why I was showing this is because I've done a lot of scales with maybe, here I've done 5 lines, but maybe I've had 30 different lines. And maybe as I was configuring those lines, I messed one of the degree notations up, or I missed one, or forgot one, or I got a call and got interrupted. And rather than trying to spread all of these lines apart individually, and look, I just accidentally grabbed the circle behind there, so I got to hit undo and click on the line and move it again. So rather than trying to do that, one of the things that I found that works really well to be able to get at all of those lines and spread those back out is I'll take one of those and move it away, and the more lines that I have, the more distance I want to give. And then I'll window around not only the one that I moved, but the group of lines. They're not grouped, but the additional lines that are all stacked on top of each other. And that, the way that I just did that, selected all of those lines. Then what I'll do is I'll go back to the format and use this evenly distribute. Now this tool is usually set up to like evenly distribute buttons or boxes or objects apart from each other, but I'm going to use it so that I can do this and then I can get at all of those individual line segments to be able to go in and say, okay, I want to configure that. Oh, this is the 5th one was the one that I missed. Go in and change that degree notation. And then I can always do the same thing with, I can select everything and align middle, align center, and put everything back to the way that it was. And so that's a real good, efficient way to be able to get at individual line items in there. Let's see, another question. came in. Regarding symbols, and I'll talk about some symbols in a few minutes. So I appreciate the comment in there. I'll bring that up. Real good topic there. Let's see. One other thing that I wanted to talk about is let's say that you wanted to get at a particular line or a particular object on the screen. One of the things that you can do is if you take a look, let me get rid of my toolbar here. I don't know why that's up. Let's see here. Well, what I'll do is I'll reduce the size of this for the time being. If you have an object selected, if you look down here in the status bar, there's an ID number. And if you didn't know, that ID number is the Z layer, or from rearmost to frontmost, the kind of the object ID in order from the rearmost, so that the biggest circle there is the rearmost object. The second circle is ID number 1, so it's the second layer, so on and so forth. So you can see that every object on the screen has a unique layer, or a group of objects has a unique layer associated with it. So if I wanted to, let's say I was delicately configuring some of these lines, and I had moved these into a place where I knew, okay, it was this line, and it was ID number 16. I can actually get to an individual item by doing this. I can go to Graphics, Selection, Go to, and then type in that ID number, and it will select that individual object. Now, how can I click on that because it's behind some of the other lines? Let me give you an example here. Let me right-click on another object, and here you're going to see Properties. I can click on this to get to the Properties, or I can double-click, we'll get to the Properties, or if you notice when I right-clicked, it says you can use Alt and Enter. So if I wanted to go directly to that object, I could choose here under Graphics, Selection, Go to, 16. It has that selected. Now I can hit Alt and Enter on my keyboard, and it'll go directly to that object, so I could get at that without having to click on it with my mouse. So that's another really good thing to know, especially if you've got layers upon layers of other things covering other things up, in this case like I do with these multiple lines, creating that scale. So hopefully that was a good tip for you. Let's go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Rotated lines for scales, arranging, go to object, properties behind another, just did that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is actually set up a PLC configuration, and I'm going to use a tag as the PLC station address. Now, why would you want to do this? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring in Modbus TCP driver. So I'm going to go to the Communications tab here, right-click, Add Remove Drivers, and insert a driver. Now, again, why would you want to do this? If you have a lot of different PLCs on your network, this makes it really easy to be able to change the IP address of the PLCs, especially if you have multiple of these, in just a single place or one location. Let me give you an idea here. So for example, I've got this Modbus driver loaded, and now when I do that, it gives us this main driver sheet. And if you know the difference between the main driver sheet and the standard driver sheets, the main driver sheet, you can put in any PLC, multiple different PLCs, and any PLC I/O address. So for example, I could have a PLC in here that was, let me just give you an example, 192.168.1.200, and I know Modbus PLCs need the port number and then the PLC ID number. So I could type that in, and let's say I went to a different address and it was actually a different IP address. And let's say that this was, instead of IP address 200, it was 201. And maybe I had another one that was, let's copy this, maybe I had another one that was 222. So if I had intermixed those and had hundreds or thousands of these, to be able to change an IP address, it might take me a long time to go through all of that. Now, one thing that I've done is I've actually copied this entire worksheet into Excel, used the find and replace, and then come back in here and pasted that in. But instead of doing that, another concept that you can do is something like this. So if instead of using the actual IP address or the station address, you can put a tag name in here inside of curly brackets, not parentheses, but inside of curly brackets. So let's say I have PLC1 in here. That doesn't exist, and it's very, very important that you make it a string type tag because you're going to have decimal points in there, colon, 502, so you're going to have other things other than just numbers in there, so it needs to be a string. So let's say, for example, I create a tag called temperature, and that doesn't exist, and then that's going to go to address 4x:1. And so now I have the temperature tag going to 4x:1 at PLC1. But I don't have that PLC1 configured yet. So what I'm going to do is save this, and then in the Tasks tab here under the script startup script, what I'm going to do is define that PLC1 tag. In VB script interface, I need to precede an InduSoft tag with a $, and here you can see that the IntelliSense has found it, and it found that it's a string type tag. So I'm going to choose that from IntelliSense, and then that is equal to, inside of double quotes, my PLC that I have that's actually a simulator is going to be my local loopback address, port 502, PLC1, and there we go. So that'll define that when the project starts, and we'll say OK. And so now if I were to put a bar graph on the screen, let's say, we'll put a rectangle and make that a bar graph and tie that to the tag called temperature. There we go. And now when I run this, I don't have my PLC simulator going, so I'm going to get an error in there. Let's actually launch my PLC simulator here. And once we do that, we'll get some values in. When that comes in, we'll launch that. And this is not an InduSoft product. This is just a third-party thing that I found on the internet. And so now you can see here this is changing, and that bar graph is going up. And it just used that tag definition to be able to point to that IP address. Now, what you could do is you could put a button or a drop-down here on the screen and say, okay, I want this to be PLC1, or maybe it was machine, whatever, or conveyor, whatever. And on the command, I could use that same style, or I could say PLC1 equals 127.0.0.1:502:1, and then make a copy of that button. And then maybe this is now a different conveyor or a different PLC. Maybe this is conveyor 1. I don't know. We'll give them different names. But then instead of going to 127, maybe we go to 192.168.1.200, which is a PLC that doesn't exist. And probably a good thing to show you is something I highly recommend is here inside of the driver worksheet, you have these status commands. It's very highly recommended that you put a tag in there, and I'm just going to make one up. We'll call it com status. And this is just a tag that I'm creating. I'm going to make this an integer tag. Now this is, if you look in the Modbus TCP manual, 0 is good communications, and non-zero will give you an error code as to what's going on. So I'm going to take that tag and put that on the screen. So we'll do this. We'll put a rectangle here, and we'll put the com status inside of curly brackets. And maybe what we'll also do in that same, we'll do com status. And then above that, we'll put the value for temperature. Inside of curly brackets. And so now we'll be able to see that what the temperature is, what the communication status is. I will save my worksheet. I haven't saved my screen. I'm a big proponent of saving often, so let's save that. And then we'll have to make it the startup screen. So once this comes up here, we'll make that the main screen. Save that, and then we'll go in and make this the startup screen. And so now when we run this, we should have communications to that simulated PLC. You can see my communications is 0, and that's because I've selected that from the 127001 from the startup script. But if I change it to a PLC that doesn't exist, you can see that it's changed and given me an error because that PLC doesn't exist. Also, let's do this. Let's put a couple things in here. I wanted an extra space in here, and let's add another line for PLC 1. What is that address? And we'll put in here PLC 1 inside of curly brackets. Give me some nice little status during runtime here. And hopefully I gave myself enough space. I did not. Let's put a little bit of length on here. And now we'll try to run this. So you can see that right now that PLC address is, because I changed it with this button, let me put it back. So it went to 127.0.0.1, and now I have good communications. And let's go ahead and change the value of that down to something, because it's going to go off the scale here in a minute. So that's a technique that you can use to change the PLC IP address during runtime. What's really convenient, especially like I said, if you have multiple PLCs. I did a project a few months ago that had 23 different PLCs, and of course the IT department decided they wanted to change all the IP addresses, and so that's all we had to do is come into the startup script and change the 23 PLCs here rather than thousands of them throughout their different line items in the main driver sheet. So it made it very, very nice and easy there. So hopefully that was a good tip and something that will become useful for you as well. I really highly recommend using a tag in the status commands, especially for the read status, write status completed. Another thing that you could do is here in the output window, watch your communications as you're going along and get some good statuses out of that as well. Let's see. So the next thing I wanted to cover here. Hint tag for tooltips or pop-up. Let's say that you wanted to have a tooltip. If you don't know what a tooltip is, sometimes it's called alt text, alternate text, tooltip, hint, or some ideas. The first thing that you need to do is go into your project viewer settings here, and you'll see this enabled tooltips. I believe it's checked by default, but it might not be. And then once you're on an individual object, you can actually, here in this hint field, you can put, let's say, we'll say PLC 1 is 127.0.0.1, and that'll give me the hint as to what that's going to do. So now when I run my project, and I hover, just move my mouse over that button, what you'll see is that floating tooltip, PLC 1, 127.0.0.1. So that gives me that nice little tooltip. Another really neat thing is I can actually embed tags into that hint. So let's say that I wanted to see what that temperature was. I could put inside of curly brackets temperature. Sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time. Temperature. And so inside of curly brackets, I could put that tag. And now when I run this, what you'll see is that that hint will also include the current value of that temperature. Now, if you notice the temperature coming from the PLC and the bar graph and down in that text display is actually changing, but the one on the hint does not automatically update. You'd have to move your cursor off and then re-mouse over it or hover back over it to get a new snapshot of that value. So just to understand the way that that works. Now, what I wanted to show you is a neat thing here. Did I skip something? I think I went out of order here. I'm going to show you the on-screen keyboard in a second. But here's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to show you a project that I made a while back that allows you to log in using a swipe pattern like you might do on a phone of a particular brand. So I want to show you how to do that. So I'm going to start by using that hint. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a rounded rectangle. I'm going to start with this idea where the first one here has a hint of just the number 1. And then I'm going to copy that, and this one will have the hint of a number 2. And I'll copy that again. Again, I'm holding down my control key as I drag a copy of that. So I have 1, 2, and 3 there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all 3 of those, copy all 3 of those down,
and then go through and configure. If you didn't know this, you don't actually have to close the properties box within InduSoft Web Studio. So here I'm going to just keep that properties box open and go, did I miss one here? So here's 4. Did I miss 2? I must have missed number 2. Let's make sure I've got 3. Why didn't that stay in there? Did I do something? I'm not quite sure what I did. Let's take a look to make sure I didn't get any extra copies here. Sometimes that happens, or get extra copies. Not quite sure what I did there. Somebody noticed what I did. I'd love to notice, love you to tell me. So let's see here. We got 4, 5, and 6. And then I'll copy these objects down and go with 7, 8, and 9. And so let me just double check these. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now what's going on here is when I run this, I could just mouse over that and you'll see the pop-up 1, 2, 3, 6, it should be 9. So I get all of those. Somebody asked a question if I could send a link for the Modbus simulator. If you just take a look for, let me launch this thing again, whatever it's called. If you just take a look for this, if you just Google it, it's called Mod Sim, Mod-Sim. So if you, there might even be a help here. Let's see if I can do an F1 and get a help. It's been a while since I looked for this. I've had this installed for a while. Looks like there might actually be a web page or something here coming up. If not, so yeah, just look for Modbus RTU or Modbus Sim. Again, we don't have any rights to this or don't support it, but it's kind of handy to have, especially if you don't have a PLC, if you're on a plane or in a hotel or whatnot. So let me go ahead and minimize this. You're welcome. Thank you for asking the question. All right, so now that I've got those hints up there, what I wanted to point out here, let me drag another rectangle here. And what I wanted to point out is that in addition to your project tags, there's also these system tags that have the date and the day and the year, but there's also one called hint, and it displays the current hint. So what I'm going to do inside of this box is I'm going to put the caption, and I will put the hint inside of curly brackets. And just so everybody can see this, I'll make this a little bit larger font. So I'll open up the font, and we'll make this 16 point. Say. And now when I mouse over that, what you should be able to see is that hint. So there's a 1, there's a 2, there's a 5, 6, 8, 7. So I've laid it out kind of like the keypad, maybe on a phone, or let's say kind of the opposite of the keypad on a keyboard, but you get the idea. You can lay this out however you want to. Now, taking that hint or taking that concept, let me open up another project. Let me save this screen here. I'll open up another project that actually utilized it and show you the concept of how this works. So this, again, was for a demonstration that we did at PAC Expo a few years ago. And when I run this, it allows us to mouse over this and create a pattern that allows you to log on. Now, I've given the people the password here. So what I'm going to do, and I actually put little arrows in here to show you that if you drag your mouse, now I'm not clicking, I'm just dragging my mouse, and it works with a touch screen as well. In this pattern, when I get to the last one, it automatically logs on to the screen. Now, there are some security issues with this and a couple of different things. Let me show you how this was actually created. So I've taken that idea of the hint and kind of expanded on that. So here you'll see the login screen, and so each one of these is doing the exact same thing. There's a number 1, there's a number 2 here, number 5, number 9, and I'm using that hint, and then I'm using that in a script. Now, the script behind the scenes here works on the idea of when you get the hint, it checks to see, okay, if the hint is 1, and I'm not a VBScript programmer, so this code might be absolutely horribly put together, but it also does a comparison on, is the login password that you've typed in, is the rightmost character already a 1? Now, this is preventing duplicates so that you can't drag your finger around on the same button over and over again. So this prevents duplicate. So it says as long as it's not a 1, then take the login tag and append the number 1 to it. And then if you swipe to the 2, as long as it wasn't a 2 already, append a 2. So if I went from 1 to 2, it would take login, starts out as blank, it puts a 1 in there, and then appends the 2 on the end of it, so it would be 1, 2. And then if you dragged your finger down to 5, it would be 1, 2, 5. So it always keeps appending what was there and adds on that at the end. Now, here's the piece that isn't very secure. What I do is I actually check for a particular number, which you wouldn't want to do. Is maybe you would be entering a password this way, so it would be masking, and you'd use the security system to do that. So this is kind of an unsecure way, but hopefully it'll get you the idea. And then when I reach that particular login password, then it automatically jumps to the home screen. The other thing about patterns on the screen is you might want to have them pop up in different areas so that you don't create a wear pattern, or using the oil or greases from your finger, you don't show what the password pattern is going to be on the screen. But it's a really neat concept and idea. It can be used for a lot of different things by using that hint idea. So let's go back to the original project that I was working on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to then get my on-screen keyboard working. So let's say that I wanted to have a value that I typed in for that temperature. Let's say I'm going to put a text object on the screen. We'll do temperature, and then we'll do pound, 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 and I will apply a text data link animation to it so that I can configure that to the tag called temperature, and I'll apply the input enabled checkbox here. Now, if you notice, the virtual keyboard is grayed out. The reason that is grayed out is because I have not enabled that in my project yet. So if you have a touch screen and you don't have a keyboard connected to, let's say it's an industrial computer, how do you enter those values? Well, let's make sure that this works before I turn everything else on. Let me show you how this works. So if I click on this object and say type in a value of 55, hit enter. Now I'm doing this with my real keyboard on my laptop, and then the PLC is in the background automatically incrementing, or the simulator is automatically incrementing. So you can see that I can type in a value, hit enter, and it'll go to that value. That's the way that it works without that virtual keyboard. If I then want to apply the virtual keyboard, what I need to go is back into those project settings in the viewer, this virtual keyboard section. So if I check the checkbox there, then I get to choose what is my default keyboard that I pop up. Is it a numeric keypad, an alphanumeric keypad, or an enhanced keypad, which is kind of a smaller version of the alphanumeric? If most of my numeric entries, or most of my entries are numeric, then I'm going to choose this as keypad to make that my default. Also notice that I can scale this here. The built-in dialogs will cause that to scale, and I'll show you how this works. So now that I've chosen that, now I can go back into this object, and you can see my virtual keyboard is not grayed out anymore. It will use the default, which I chose as keypad, or I could pick which one I wanted to use if I needed a different type. So I'm going to say use default, which should be that numeric type. And then when we run this project, if I needed to type this, it'll bring in the pop-up keypad. I can type in a value, hit enter, and it'll go to that. And if I needed it to be a little bit larger, what I would do is go into the project viewer settings, maybe set this at 200%, or you can use auto scale if you want it to scale automatically on different resolutions. It'll try to auto fit that in there. And then when I click on this, it'll bring up a larger version of the keypad as well. So hopefully that gives you guys some ideas on how that's used. But this presents an issue. If you're using InduSoft objects, that works great. But let's say, and the reason I even thought of this is I was at a customer a couple of months ago, and they had a web page embedded into the screen as an ActiveX. So they had an ActiveX web browser. They would open up a screen, and then this type of InduSoft keypad wouldn't work for that type of interface. So they wanted to use the built-in Windows on-screen keyboard. So I'm going to go back in and turn this keyboard off, so they don't have two different keyboards popping up. And so what they wanted was to be able to use the built-in Windows, what's called the on-screen keyboard, or OSK. So I just type that into my Windows here, Windows Start button, run thing, and so you'll see OSK here. So that found OSK.exe. And some industrial PCs will have this preloaded where you can drag it in from the edge of the screen. Some may not. So here's a button that, or here's how you would launch on-screen keyboard from Windows. But how can you do that from, let's say, within InduSoft Web Studio? What I found just by doing a simple Google search is that go back up here. For the different versions of Windows, there's actually a different link to that on-screen keyboard. Now, I will make this available. Sorry, I accidentally went to the next slide here. I will make this link available. This will be saved when we save the video so that you can get at this. So what I'm going to do is let me exit out of this slideshow here and actually grab this text. So if you don't know, the WinExec command is a way that InduSoft can launch like a command line. So I'm basically going to copy this exact line as I have it here and paste it into a button. Let me put a new button on the screen here. Maybe I want to launch that, and we'll call it on-screen keyboard, and make the command that exact same thing that I just copied, and make sure that everything is in there. And again, there are different places where you can find the OSK.exe depending on the operating system. The customer actually had a question because they found the 32-bit version, but they couldn't find the 64-bit version. So this is actually the 64-bit version. And one of the questions on this morning's webinar is, could you make that a tag? And the answer is absolutely. You can make that a tag, and depending on the operating system, choose which one you go to. So that's a possibility there. So let's go ahead and say OK here. Close that. And so now when we run this, we should be able to run this and launch our on-screen keyboard. I should be able to select my value there. I'll type in 22, hit enter, and so now you can use that not only with InduSoft objects, but also with an embedded web browser or other embedded objects. So another alternative way to get to a touchscreen keyboard, if you don't like ours or want something different, or maybe language is an issue, that's another way to get to that. So hopefully that helps you out. Good tip there, I think. Let's see here. The next thing that I want to do is, let me go ahead and run this again, is trend configuration. This is an application that I built on top of an existing application, and I don't want you to be fooled because, let me go ahead and save this. I used a basis of an application called Trend Annotation ID, and this can be found on the website under Products and Downloads, under the sample applications, but my modifications are not in there, so I don't want you to think you'll be able to download this today, because you won't. So what I did is I actually started with sample applications. I started with, I think we got to go several pages into here. We'll go down to 100, and if I remember right, it's off the bottom. It's on the next page. And this Trend Annotation ID. And this shows how to insert comments into the pens displayed in the trend control. Well, this particular project that I'm running actually broke that feature. I'll show you what it's supposed to do, or tell you what it's supposed to do. The one from the website actually works. So you won't have these two buttons here, but when you get to Trend Annotate, you can click and put your mouse cursor on one of the pens, say Add Comments. You can put your comments in here, and then when you apply it, what you'll see is that text actually flying in a little flag along with the value of where that crossed on there. And you can go ahead and edit these. You can see as my different tests over the years I've put in here. Maybe I can reload this. I don't know. Again, I broke this part. I'm not sure why this. I didn't want to. This is not the real thing that I wanted to show you. What I want to show you is these two pages here. So I've got some simulated values coming into this trend. I'm simulating a sine wave, a cosine wave, and random. and two different parts of this. Let me go ahead and unmerge these axes so I have all three pens on their own separate axes. And what I wanted to point out is for each pen, I can actually, if you watch this maximum limit here, I can change the scale during runtime, and I can change the minimum, the maximum, and then I can pick the next pen, change the minimum and maximum of that red pen, and then change the bottom one. And then let's say I wanted to merge those axes again. You can see how all those different axes have now different mins and maxes. So that's one way to do that, or one thing. Let's now say that instead of being 3 minutes in duration wide, I want this to be 1 minute in duration wide. So I'm going to put 001:00. And maybe on that dark blue pen, it's a thin blue pen, maybe I want this to be thicker color, and then maybe the red pen, instead of red, I want it to be this purple color. Hopefully this is all coming through. And maybe we'll make this a thicker line with a marker in it so that you can see where all the data samples are. Hopefully that comes through okay. Now, what I wanted to point out is that you can actually save these configurations, the durations, the scales, the coloring. If I wanted to save this, I could go in here, and I've made this little interface, and maybe I'll call this test, and I made some tests earlier. I'll call this test 111, and I'll save that. And now one of the tests that I made earlier was test 123, so I could go in here and pick test 123, and it will change that back to the configuration that I made earlier. Maybe it would change the duration, maybe it would change to an hourly trend, a daily trend, a weekly trend. So it'll change the duration, change the coloring to specifically maybe help you understand the process or what's going on. And then I could actually go back to another view. Now, you don't have to choose the same interface. This could be drop downs, this could be buttons, and if I wanted to go back to the one that I just created, I can do that too. So let me show you how that interface is working and how this min and max is working in this project. If I go into this save settings here, so the first thing here is the scale. So on my points, I have the min scale and the max scale with an array number of 1, 2, or 3. That's pen 1, 2, or 3. And what's happening is when I choose this radio button, it sets the value of the selected row to 1 or to 2 or to 3. And then it uses that in this slider, and it's using that selected row to set the max scale for that particular pen, 1, 2, or 3. So that's how that's working. The next thing that I wanted to show you is the naming of this, or how this is working. Basically here I'm using this interface to change the config file name, and then I'm triggering the saving of that. And if I go here into this trend, click on advanced, what's doing is it's changing the config file name, and notice that's inside of curly brackets, and it's saving this in the file extension STMP, and that's the trend configuration. It saves all the different pen colors and line thicknesses and durations and start and stop and all that. I'm not even exactly sure what it saves, but if somebody wants to see, let's say, an hourly view, a daily view, a weekly view, this is how you can do it, is put a name in there, tell it to save, put a name in there and tell it to load back in, and it'll go back and call that up. The other thing is that I wanted to show is these other two, offset and cursor position. So this offset is changing. If I go here into points, I go in here to options. I have a tag in here called offset, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that value with this slider from -100 to 100. And when I do that, let me show you what happens here. Let's run this. I had somebody put in not really a question. They were telling me that you can also use Indirect for tag names. And I'm going to actually show that in this next window here. But I wanted to show you this idea of this offset. So let's go ahead and put, you know what, let's load this trend 111 back in here so I get that looking the way that I wanted to. And let's pause this and stack those. So with this offset, I can take that one pen and I can actually move it back and forth and line it up maybe with another pen. Let's unstack those and say, okay, I want to line those up so I can compare those and say, oh, that one's a little bit higher, or we had this jump here, what happened? So some really good things that we can see there. So the other thing is you have this cursor that you can click. Most people know that you can click on the screen, but a lot of people don't know that you can actually move the cursor with a tag value. So here I can move it from 0 to 100%, and where that's done is here in your axes here under cursor. So I set a cursor position 0 to 100%, and I can slide that back and forth and get the result value into a different tag. So that's one way that you can do it. Now, good eye, whoever sent that in, that we can use indirect tags. So the next part of this is being able to choose tags on the fly. So here is this trend configuration. Right now I'm not showing any pens, but I have this little interface that I made and said, okay, I want to show the random as the first pen, then maybe the second clock on the second pen, and then maybe a cosine on the third pen. And so now I can get those different pens and I can change those. Maybe I don't want the simulation random on the first pen. Maybe I want that to be a sine wave. I can change that, and I can actually change the values. So a little bit complicated, and again, I'm going to include the relevant material or maybe even this application when we post this stuff on the web. So what's happening here is I have this drop down that provides you with the selection in here. That selection actually gets the name of that label. And then what we do is we use this to take that selection and using the indirect addressing right to this thing called ltrend.1. And then if we look in the trend, here's where it uses ltrend.1. So I'm using indirect addressing to then configure these 3 pens. And you could do this and add multiple. It doesn't have to be 3. It could be more than 3. And I'm also using the tag property called description, indirect to tag trend.1, and then using this little syntax here to point to the description to automatically get that label in there as well. Same thing with the max scale and min scale as well. So really good ideas, really neat ways to use trends. So good point. Thank you for bringing that up, but I was already headed there, so I beat you to it. The next thing that I wanted to show is HTML reporting and give you some ideas there. So what I'm going to do is bring up an example that I made. A customer we had a few years ago wanted to be able to print an invoice, or what's called a bill of lading. So we made a project do that, and then I had somebody else say, hey, can I embed a trend picture into that report? And the answer is yes. So what we did is we took the standard InduSoft report and I made it HTML. So this is just text, and what I did is I used a third-party tool just to create HTML, and then inside of the HTML you're going to see that I'm using tag names in here for the Bill To and Ship To company. And then what I've done is I've actually used, somewhere in here is the here's the trend output.jpg, and I'll show you that in just a minute. So what I've done here on the, let me go ahead and run this and you get the idea of what's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load in a customer. So I have 3 different company names. I have the Big Cow Company, Green Acre Farms, and Hayfields. So I'm going to pick Hayfields and say OK. And so that loads a recipe in the background just so I can get my data in there. And in the meantime, what I'm doing is I'm letting some trend values build up in here. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of move this up and down while I build in some nice values in here. And once this gets some values, take a look at how this trend is configured. Then I'll export that trend. And so what that's done is that's now saved that as a JPEG, as trend output.jpg. And now I'll print the report. And what this has done is printed the report as HTML. I'm going to open up a new screen, but first I'm going to tell it which screen to open. So today's date, it's 5 o'clock here, so that's 1720. So what you should see is embedded in a web browser is now the ability to open up that web page. And then there's the data that I had coming in with Hayfields in there. added the time and the date, and so this could then be printed to a printer, let's say, or turned into a PDF and attached to an email. So real nice way to do that. Let me show you a little bit more about how some of this is working, especially when I said open the report. If you notice that it has the time and date stamp built into the name. So what's happening in there is in that bill of lading, inside of curly brackets, not only am I using the bill name or the name for the bill of lading, but I'm also putting the year, the month, the day, the hour, minute, and the second inside of curly brackets .html. So that creates that in there. And then the other thing, as I mentioned down here, which was the trend output on that screen where I picked this button here, that actually caused the trend to export, and then I saved it as trend output.jpg, and then which showed up as the embedded image in that HTML report. So so hopefully that gives you some good ideas and some things. Let's see if I covered everything that I wanted to, the trend, the HTML report. So I'm going to open it up to questions. Sorry I ran a little bit long here, but hopefully it gave you some good information, some tips and tricks, some easy to use things for fonts, for indirect addressing, for the PLC Station Address, trending, some really good stuff. I hope everybody got a chance to see something that is of use to them, learn something new. Don't forget to fill out the survey and let us know what you'd like to see, or if you'd like to participate and be a co-host on a webinar as well. And if you give us your shirt size and address, we'll send you a free t-shirt just for joining us today. I don't see any other questions coming in. Some compliments. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. We really appreciate you joining these webinars. Hopefully you get something out of it. And we really enjoy doing them. We love having all these users, and we really like the fact that people are using our forums and answering other people's questions, and really good community. We really like the support behind the product with everybody, all of you guys using it. Really enjoy it. I don't see any questions, any new questions, so I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. Really appreciate everybody joining us, and join us again for another webinar. Thank you. Really appreciate it, and have a great day.